All right, you ready? Who's ready? Guess what? Allison raised her hand. That was awesome. Guess what today is? No, it's not my birthday. Sorry. That was the wrong introduction. All right. Today is so anticlimactic. We're going to talk about classical conditioning. That's what today is. Today we're going to talk about classical conditioning. But ready? By the end of this topic, which will be today, classical conditioning, and next week, Monday, we'll start opera, and then, so that's learning, and then we'll do memory, and then we'll do emotions. 3 way cool topics, I think. By the end of just even this today, ready? Most of you should be able to know the basic principles of how to get a cat, to run in abject terror and fear by this sound. Ready? There's a cat that I lived with for a few years, whose owner was a guy named Gary Bird, who was studying to be a veterinarian. That's a funny thing. Gary Bird becoming a vet. And he became a vet. And he decided, ready? When I was a graduate student, there were about 6 of us, and we all lived in the same house, and he decided that if he's going to become a vet, he ought to get a pet, to kind of understand that dynamic. So he gets a cat named Sydney. Well, I'm studying psychology as a graduate student. He's in vet. There's a few others. And I decided to go ahead and use some principles that I'm going to teach you today. And so we trained Sydney the cat to run as wild and crazy as possible. If he would walk in the room and you'd go like this, he would freak out and go like that. That's all we did. How do we do it? There's a bird that lives on this corner right there, on Mansa and Viola Avenue. It's a crow. Crows live a long time. Crows tend to have territories. That is, you'll see them in flocks and they'll live and sleep, but then they go and they pretty much they live and hang out in one particular area. They claim it as their own. So this crow, I used to live on that corner right there years ago. There's this crow who lived there the whole time I lived there, 10 years. It's still there. The way I know this crow is still there because it has a deformed foot. If you drive over here at some point and you're walking, look at the crows that are on the corner of Viola right over here and see if you see a crow with a club foot. It'd be about 15 years old. I call him Clubby. Clubby is well known to my family because I use the principles in this class that I'm about to train and talk to you about to have Clubby, wherever he was, he always hangs around right over here. And I believe Clubby's a female. I think because I've seen another doll, and then I see babies all the time. And then the baby grew up, and then the next year or two, there's another little baby, and then they grow up, and Clubby's still always around. But Clubby will do this. If you whistle, Clubby, wherever Clubby is, will stop, look up, and fly over to the driveway where I used to live, waiting for food. I trained Clubby to come flying over at this sound. You'll see this bird go, and fly over, land up on the little railing, the wires. I'll do it again, and then he'll fly down eventually down into the driveway of the house I used to live in to get food. How did I train the bird to do that? How did we train the cat to run like that? My wife learned to immediately avoid any movie in which that sound, right? It's the same principle. By the end of today and next week, you could also possibly know how to apply, first of all, the principles that would even get you into SeaWorld to be able to train any of their let's say, whales or dolphins, because you'll know the principles by which you get a dolphin to fly up into the air, and it's so simple. How many have a dog or a cat? You raise your hand, that's awesome. How many have a dog or cat that is trained in some way to respond to a sound, a noise, or an object? And what is it? So what's the object, and what are they trained to do?
Okay. Yeah, so my cat, we trained it to, we say this like a catchphrase or something for like food. We fill up the bowl and we're like,
so at the moment the bowl is filled with food, you're...
Right, yeah, we say nummy nummy, and like the cat will like...
nummy nummy. Nummy nummy. Can you just say the word nummy nummy and the cat will come running?
Oh, yeah.
That's awkward, huh? It's like, watch the nummy nummy, and then they come running. That's not awkward, that's funny. That's awesome.
My dog, if you put out your hand like a gun, you go, it lays on its back and plays dead.
If she says her dog, if you go, the dog lays on its back and plays dead.
Tell our dog to sing.
To sing?
Howl.
To howl. What? At what?
If they sing and she howls.
Oh, you say the word sing and your dog howls.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Oh, so this is, you taught your dog sign language, that means sit. So that means no more. And he runs away. Wow. Huh?
I have a dog, but my friend has a dog, and he said, SpongeBob, it's like saying no to him, and so he'll get really like, he'll say SpongeBob in any tone. And he'll get really sad.
So he gets sad at the word SpongeBob. I don't think that's funny, huh? Because it's like one of the best shows ever.
Like, you would say it, but like, I think SpongeBob.
And he gets real sad. Wow, that's interesting.
We trained our dog to, whenever we say, "You're kitty, kitty," to come running.
When you say you're kidding, your dog comes running. Yeah, see, we can be really interesting and cruel about these things. By the way, this works with human beings. And by the end of today, or Monday, I will train you how to have your roommate run in fear at the sound, if you would like. If they're in this room, we'll do it to somebody else. It is so easy and so quick. Listen, but there's a serious side to this, because here's the serious side. We use these same very principles that we're talking about with these dogs, with these cats, with some of these animals, and even with human beings. It is these same principles, the primary ways that we work with the clientele that I have a lot of experience working with, and that is emotionally and behaviorally disturbed children. It can be used with, quote, non-emotionally and behaviorally disturbed children, but in almost any home that you go into that caters or has as its residential philosophy working with that clientele, kids that are emotionally or behaviorally disturbed, for example, they will use these same principles. And it is an extremely effective way of working with a population that needs structure. And behaviors that you want to be reinforced are reinforced, and behaviors you don't want are extinguished or not reinforced. This process, by the way, what we're aiming for by the end of next time is something called behavior modification. It will be rare for you to find any home that doesn't use behavior modification, even in homes in which they're not trained in this, because it's the way most of us will raise our children. You use behavior, your parents use behavior modification. In fact, I'll give you an example of behavior modification we'll talk about punishment. How many in this room have ever been spanked by one of your parents? Okay, I think I see every hand. Let me see your hand if you were not and have not ever been spanked by your parent. 3 or 4 people. The rebels. The rest of them aren't in school anymore. Is there something about spanking that feels as if 95% of the people in this room have been spanked, we ought to know what it means? It's a form of behavior modification. Your parents were attempting to modify your behavior. So in order to understand this, I'm going to go over the basics. Does that sound cool? By the end of the day, those are our promises, is that you're going to get through classical and operant conditioning. You have to learn some of these basics, and I want to be able to share some of those so that at the end we can come to that point where you can not only train an animal, but you can work, I think, more effectively with a variety of people, including children that you might one day be working with or currently working with, knowing how we respond to reinforcement. That cat and that bird come flying because they associated those sounds or these phrases or these words with something. And it's usually something they find reinforcing. And the way we discovered this, it's been known for a long time. It's not like anybody wasn't unaware that people like good things, but in order to do this in a systematic, fundamental, or scientific way, it wasn't until about 110 years ago that someone finally laid out the principles of how do you get that animal right there to do that thing right when you want it to do. See, those two animals right now are jumping because the man over there by the G is raising his hands as a sign to say, "Come here, kitty," or whatever he said. That was kind of a joke, get it? And that animal heard that and went, "Now it's my time. He just told me to jump." How many have ever been to SeaWorld before? How many find SeaWorld? Okay, here's my reaction. I was absolutely amazed when they took this little wire or ball and they put it on a ceiling as high as this ceiling. I don't know how high that ceiling is. It's easily 25 feet. And I remember them raising that up, saying, now this dolphin is going to come out and touch that. And I thought, there is absolutely no way. What will propel it out of the water that high? And why would it do it on command? And I remember just being amazed at that moment when that dolphin touched that. And that's what we're going to learn, that principle. It's straightforward, but it kind of revolutionized the way we think about learning. So, at the most basic level, learning is nothing but a change in an organism's behavior. All that says is, when we find change in some organism's behavior, we're going to call that learning, and that is probably one of the most comprehensive definitions you will ever find. What's learning? What's a change in an organism's behavior? What does that say? Everything is learning. Give me an example of something that you're doing right now that's learning, because you've learned it. Give me an example right now, something you're doing.
Typing.
You're typing. You had to learn where those keys were. It's usually a QWERTY text keyboard. Writing. You had to learn how to put together letters. What else are you doing that's learning? Let's learn. You're sitting here and you're raising your hand when I ask questions, most of you. Listening. Give me an example, okay? Reading. Give me something that's not learned. Give me examples of things. Why is this so comprehensive of a definition? Anything that's changed. Give me something that's not learned. For you or for anybody, for animals maybe, or breathing. So this animal has changed its experience, has changed its behavior due to experience, so it jumps up there at the command. So if you've ever been to SeaWorld, they say to this animal, whatever they say to it, the phrase, the word, the whistle usually, or a hand signal, that animal goes, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do. I've learned something. When that happens, I go up there. Because what is that animal going to get next? It's going to get a reinforcement. By the way, it's probably primarily going to be food. These animals eat a lot of food. You keep it somewhat hungry in some respects so that it is motivated, because if it's completely satiated, and some animals don't act as, they don't follow, but there's other things that's reinforcing for that animal. Her hand is on there, that's reinforcing, by the way, for that animal to be rubbed like that. They like that. But give me an example of behavior that's not learned. Examples of behaviors not learned. So someone said breathing. Most of you do not, and none of us had to. That first breath for some might have been you got to get that in, but you didn't have to learn it. You just it just took over. So there are some behaviors that are not learned. Can you think of other things that people do that are just not learned? They just do them. So we would say breathing was one of those. Let's just add any reflex. Blinking. Babies come out, for the most part, swallowing and blinking pretty normally. You don't have to teach them. Now, taking a bottle or food in requires a lot of patience and time because they're learning how to coordinate all this swallowing and stuff. Anything else you can think of? There are some behaviors that a child will do just almost like a reflexive action, like grasping is one of those. They tend to grab or grasp without us teaching. Can you think of other things that humans might do? Crying or yelling, or so behaviors that are, that can be reinforced. Some babies learn to cry or not cry at certain times, and then that just depends. Maturation or natural growth, I know you wouldn't necessarily think about that, but no one had to teach you all how to grow and learn or to develop. But did you see the 20-year-old who died a week ago? Have you been paying attention to her? 20 years ago, a child was born, lived a life, died on October 24th. She was 20. What made her unique is she didn't mature. There was no growth. Because see, we take it for granted that we just naturally grow. This is her, by the way. That's her. That's her with her. Ready? Well, let's start at the beginning. That's her. This is her. Her name is Brooke Greenberg. This is her younger sister, Carly, in yellow. Carly's in yellow. Brooke is in white. That's Brooke, who stays right there. And look at her younger sister. That's her younger sister, and that's her younger sister, and that's her younger sister. And that is Brooke right there, who continues to look just like that after 20 years. She just died last week. And we don't know why she never grew. She always was a toddler. She had some problems with her hips, so she couldn't walk very well. But that's her. She continued, so the question was, what in the world? We just assume development and growth comes in. I don't have any more to say about this. It's just an interesting phenomenon and there are always these questions that people say, would this provide us an opportunity to explore why her genes are developing or not developing in a way, but she lived that life like she looked like a toddler. She had the mental capacity of about a 1-year-old. And she always looked like that. Isn't that interesting? I say this only because maturation and natural growth are, she just died here, but they're just part of things that we don't have to normally learn. And you couldn't have taught Brooke anything. That was just the way her body, for some reason, responded. Another one that's not learned is something called instincts. Instincts are things that animals we primarily associate with animals. They'll do instinctual behavior. They'll migrate, for example, miles and miles, thousands of miles, for example, or they'll hibernate, or they'll do things by instinct. Humans we're not really instinctual beings. There's some probably in there, but it's probably not that critical. There is one that animals also do a little bit of. It's called imprinting. You all know what imprinting is? It's primarily with, let's say, I think of imprinting, I think of ducks. When a duck is born, it imprints itself upon whatever moves in its environment. Wasn't there a movie made about ducks that imprinted upon something, and he tried to get them to fly south for the winter, and he had them imprint to an airplane, and he flew that airplane. So remember that? Fly away home. I don't know what it was either. Ducks, ready? They come out of the egg, and what they do is they imprint on. That means they come strongly attached to whatever moves in their environment. If it's a mother duck, usually guess what they imprint to? The mother duck, which is 99% of the time what it is. Sometimes ducks imprint upon whatever else is in its environment. My older brother, for example, had a duck imprint upon him. My dad's a police officer. Somebody called up and said, yeah, hey, they call cops all the time like this. I don't know why. Hey, there's a little duck all by itself. It just hatched, and it's sitting here. We don't know what to do with it. So they called the police. So my dad went, and he has this soft little heart, so he took the duck and he brought it home. And it imprinted on my older brother, Mark. Which meant everywhere Mark went, the duck followed. And it was kind of cool for like a week. And he followed him everywhere. And so Mark would walk in, here would be the little duck, just imprinted on Mark. And it wanted to sleep by Mark all night long. And the duck wanted to get in bed with Mark and get warm with Mark. And after a week, Mark didn't get any sleep. So one night, 7 nights into this, I get woken up. I'm a very deep sleeper. And I don't really remember the conversation, but it went something like this. Chris, the duck, man, Squeaky. Chris, could you take Squeaky? And I said, what? He goes, the duck, man, I can't sleep. Could you put it in your room with you? And I went, okay, sure. And he goes, it kind of likes to get in bed with you and get warm. And I went, okay, fine. So the box moves in there, and the duck gets in bed with me. I don't remember this whole conversation. And then in the morning, when I woke up, the duck likes to get warm, and he likes to crawl down there by my feet, apparently. And so Mark would pull the duck back up and, give it air. I didn't. I woke up, Squeaky was at the bottom of the bed with no air, and he was dead. I felt horrible. I didn't even go to school that morning because I felt so horrible about Squeaky. And all I remember thinking was, my brother is going to kill me. And I saw him later, and I realized I had to tell him. I said, Mark, I got bad news. Something messed up. This whole air thing. And I told him, and I said, Squeaky's dead. And he went, oh, really? That was his reaction. Oh, really? Yeah. And he goes, oh, okay. It was like, you can hear that little, he's like, thank God. Because, yeah, so it tasted like chicken, by the way. It was really, we buried it in the front yard, it's fine. Okay, imprinting. Ready? Here's imprinting gone awry. Not that one, but that was but this is a mother duck, and that's imprinting. See those little things? This is called imprinting and bad parenting. This is bad parenting. Watch. That's the mother, those are the ducklings, and she's walking over that, and look what happens. The pictures went, and he kept taking it, and then they went and rescued him, by the way, and they pulled the grate off and gone, all the ducks were safe. But that's called imprinting. Okay. For the most part, humans are, the definition then holds for almost everything we do. There's some form of learning that's involved, this change that we have to write, to speak, to say, to dress. I mean, you've learned to dress a certain way or wear your hair a certain way. And that learning comes in very quickly. You've learned what you like to wear or not wear, most of you, because of other people's reactions to you, usually a parent, but sometimes friends. So almost all the things that we do, and so when this was first discovered, classical conditioning, it was only about 100 some years ago where a person began to explore, that's just a picture, about spanking, and this concept of learning that takes place. Well, let me ask you this question. This little child's about to get spanked. What were some of the objects that you remember being spanked with? Let me see your what is a wooden spoon. Let's see how many people had the wooden spoon spanked. Look at all y'all. We create a whole generation of people who will never be cooks, or like wooden spoons. Bad. Another one. A belt. How many had the belt when you were okay? The other half of the wooden. How many had the wooden spoon and the belt? Just depending whichever one was most handy. Wooden spoon, belt. Do we have another one? No? Okay, now way back there.
Switch.
A switch. Like kind of like a whip, sort of.
Yeah.
Do they just keep it for that purpose?
No, we had to pick it off the tree.
You had a what?
We had to pick it off the tree.
So wait, so you had to, so you got in trouble, and your dad or mom, or which one?
No, I had to pick it, and if
I
it
know.
wasn't good enough, they would get the worst one.
So you had to go pick the switch off the tree. Anybody? Yeah, that's, a pizza what? A pizza paddle. Did you have my way back there? Hold on, wait. But seriously, anybody else have the pizza paddle, or is she alone at fearing Domino's right now? Don't call Domino's. One more? A metal spatula. Wow. Okay, who else has one? Yeah, go. Just the hand. How many had just the hand? Yeah, like just the hand. Fear the hand. Wait, oh. Okay, we won't even repeat that one. He said the little plastic tracks for the Hot Wheels cars. Okay. Ready? Here's the point. Many of you have associations with some of these things. In fact, I can tell you're recalling them right now. Like, oh, I remember the wooden spoon. Or just the moment my dad started to unfasten his belt was not, or the use of your middle name. You know, that was all. Okay. An association then is being formed, and that's learning. So classical conditioning says there's a type of learning in which a spoon, a Hot Wheels track, a wooden whatever spatula, a switch, whatever it was, that neutral stimulus is now being paired with fear or pain, called an unconditioned stimulus. And now that object itself, how many had a hairbrush? Anybody have a hairbrush? Somebody with messy hair today. The hairbrush, it now begins to trigger a response similar to that normally triggered by the unconditioned stimulus. That's a big definition, but that's all it is. I'm just explaining why, or why a wooden spoon, which is neutral for most people. As babies, these things are neutral things. There are not a lot of cats. If you go into buy a cat and you go, that cat's not going to do anything until you train it, because that's a neutral sound. But it gets paired with an unconditioned stimulus, and then that sound begins to trigger a response similar to that normally triggered by this unconditioned stimulus. That's what we're going to explore today. And we're just going to dive at this. Does this topic ring a bell for any of you all as to who started studying this area? Does it ring a bell for any of you all? Oh. If it does, who is it? Ivan Pavlov. It rings a bell for her. That's awesome. That's it. Ready? This definition we're going to explore, there's a key word in this. It begins this process of being paired, and it starts with something called associations. See, we and our minds are primed to associate things. We associate people and places and objects with certain things. Give me an association that's pretty strong for you of a place. What do you associate with it? The idea is, where's the happiest place on earth? People say, okay, so they want you to associate Disneyland. I'm happy. Are there other associations that you have of places or people or locations? Like, by the way, for me, going into a mall reminds me, I don't know why I like Cinnabon. I just associate that. That's just me, so that's an association. We are primed for associations. What happens is this process, for example, I've used some examples of which spanking becomes an association, and that's the key ingredient in all of learning. The key ingredient is that our minds are prepped and prepared and ready to associate two events, primarily those events that happen pretty close in time. You see, if you want to train an animal, a dog or a cat or a bird, to come flying, you have to put two things together. That which it normally likes and some other signal that is associated with that. That is the key ingredient. We associate, and our minds are prepared to do this. In fact, we find associations all the time, sometimes, and they're not even there. We just find associations. Sometimes fear is like this. Some of you have a fear of a spider, or a snake, or heights, or a phobia, because you associate what with that animal, or that insect, or that reptile. There's fear, man, and you're going, oh, that spider makes me afraid that I will be eaten by it, or whatever. I don't know what you're afraid of. You will die from this spider, and your association is bad things happen. There's an association with spider webs, right? Because if you walk through a spider web, how many of y'all go, it's not the web that you really care about, it's what's in that web. And you're like, where's the thing in the web? So we have an association with webs. Like, oh, there might be some spider there. It's associations. Or, oh yeah, you go ahead, sorry.
There's this funny like Vine video where it's like they always do like what it is and what it feels like, and it's like these two guys walking through like this tiny little spider web, and they're like, and then it's like
What it is and what it feels like. Yeah. Those are great because those are associations that we have. Many of you have an association, ready? Similar to that. If you're driving in a car, I'll watch your behavior and you'll see it yourself. If you see a police officer driving by, what's your first reaction? You put the brakes on. Every one of you are like, oh. One, because you're probably speeding. But even if you're not speeding, it's like, oh, I've associated what with that police officer? Trouble, jail, prison time. You associate with that police officer things like maybe getting a ticket. Right? You don't want that. That's bad. I'll lose money, whatever. So we make associations. That's the key ingredient. The person you should associate with this is a guy named Ivan Pavlov. Not because he created learning, it's not because classical, it's just because he spent time studying dogs, and something happened as this Russian physiologist began to explore how dogs salivate and create stomach juices when given food. Ivan Pavlov was this Russian physiologist. This was his lab and some of his workers in that lab. And so it's an old picture. In this, what we begin to do is sense and recognize he found a weird thing happened. He cut a little hole. This isn't the weird thing. He cut a little hole in the dog's cheek. Wasn't painful. It's like getting what some of you all do with those things, piercings. That's all he did. He gave the dog a piercing before it was hip to give dogs piercings. And he collected saliva when they presented the dog food, because he was trying to study salivation and its role in digestion of food. He was very smart. He studied in St. Peter, what's called today St. Petersburg. And that's all he did. So he collected this saliva. When he presented that dog meat powder, that saliva would run and it would go through that little cup there, and he would just measure how much saliva was created, and he studied it. That's all. Well, what happened is now something that's very fascinating. This is just a reenactment of what Ivan Pavlov studied while he did this. So here's a quick video, reenactment of what happened in this study.
Pavlov's aim was to discover what caused saliva to flow. He rerouted the salivary ducts to the outside of his dog's cheek so that he could collect and measure the spittle.
Let me see if I can get this louder. Is there a way to get it loud? Oh, there it is. Ah, yes. Okay, here we go. Hopefully that's louder.
Pavlov's aim was to discover what caused saliva to flow. He rerouted the salivary ducts to the outside of his dog's cheek so that he could collect and measure the spittle. Perhaps, he thought, the production of saliva might be the result of a fixed nervous reflex, like a knee jerk.
5 минут 42,5 секунды.
After taking many measurements of spittle, he confirmed that the dogs drooled automatically when their tongues touched food. He called the response the salivation reflex.
4,5. Хорошая собачка. Я предлагаю поменять собаку.
But his work started to run into trouble. As his dogs became familiar with the experimental routine, they started to fill their cheek tubes before Pavlov had a chance to stimulate their tongues. The dogs were learning to anticipate food. Pavlov tried a new technique. He erected screens so that the dogs couldn't see what was going on. Before passing meat through the hatch, he introduced a stimulus that was totally unrelated to feeding. A ticking metronome. At first, the dog dripped saliva into its cheek tube only when the food appeared. But after a number of trials, the dog began to connect the ticking with the arrival of meat. Soon, the sound alone made the dog drool. Eventually, the dog salivated as much to the ticking itself as it did originally to the presentation of food.
Полная. Идите сюда. Что я говорил?
He called this new response the conditioned reflex.
Собака.
Whatever the stimulus, his dogs could soon be conditioned to produce saliva. Pavlov believed that he had discovered how animals learned, even in the wild.
Yeah, sorry for the sound there, but all right. Pavlov, studying salivation. Here's the quick review. Before conditioning, you ring a bell, there's no response. Okay? It wouldn't be the dog wouldn't do anything. If you go home to your dog and ring a bell, he's not going to, most dogs aren't going to salivate. But that's before this process that he called conditioning, now call classical conditioning. You ring a bell, it's called a neutral stimulus. Just like if you go up to a cat and go ch-ch, or a crow and go, or bring out a wooden spoon to a 5-year-old that's never seen one before. And I'm going to have a response to it. It's before conditioning. During the process, he gives the dog food while the dog has a response. This unconditioned stimulus, food, causes the dog to salivate. So if you take a puppy and you put food in its mouth, or it smells food, or it gets near food, it will begin to salivate. Everybody knew that. Everyone was studying this. This wasn't the odd thing. What happened next was this animal, during this process, picked up something and saw that the footsteps of the attendant or the person bringing in the food was associated for this dog with food. So he tried a bell, which was neutral. He added the food right after that, and that caused the dog to salivate. Right? And that's what Pavlov stopped doing, was studying salivation and started studying this. His insight, his contribution started when things were messing up and he didn't want the dog to see the attendant, but then he started to see, and it started to work on him, something is weird or different here. And he just said, okay, forget studying dog's stomach and salivation. I'm going to study what just happened. This dog now salivates at the sound of this bell, and he called it a conditioned stimulus. The bell rings, and now the dog salivated. That's what he studied. We call it classical as a conditioning process. So classical conditioning. After being conditioned, this dog now, just like a dog over here will respond to the word, to hand signals, or the word SpongeBob, or the word let's go, or keys that you shake when your dog get excited if you shake your keys, or say the word park or go or whatever. That condition becomes a conditioned stimulus. Okay? That's what he found. In order to kind of explore this, what I want to do is make sure you get it. So I want to put it in a form that allows you to write all this down. And there's a lot here on this slide, but it starts with the unconditioned stimulus. So this unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus that, ready? Naturally, without conditioning, it triggers a response. In the example we've just been using with the dog, what was the unconditioned stimulus? By the way, I'll refer to it as the UCS. That's a common way we refer to the unconditioned stimulus. It's just using the letters, use unconditioned, UCS, unconditioned stimulus. In the case that we were talking about with Pavlov, what was the unconditioned stimulus? It's the food. It's a stimulus that the dog would get, ready, food in the mouth, and that unconditioned stimulus led the dog to do what? To give a response, to salivate. We call that the unconditioned response. It wasn't conditioned. Go up to a dog, or go up to an animal and give it food, a human, whatever. We will respond, and in this case, dogs responded with this unconditioned response. It's unlearned. Okay, does that make sense? So the UCS leads to the UCR. That's pretty straightforward. It's unconditioned, unlearned. If I took a puff of air, and you were sitting there and I was on the side of you, but I blew, let's say through a straw into your eye, what would you do? If air comes into your eye from a source over here, you will blink. You don't have to learn to do it. That stimulus causes you to blink. Okay? So we've actually taken little things like that, a little baby feeder, or a little whatever that is. Squeeze it, blow, whatever, and you will blink. That's called an unconditioned response to a stimulus, in this case air. What Pavlov learned, and what people then from that point forward began studying, is what happened next, which is, okay, we humans, just like animals, make associations that I talked about at the beginning of this time, and those associations are so strong that this dog just began on its own to associate food coming with that guy walking down carrying the food. And that's called this process of which we now condition a stimulus to lead to the same response, which is ringing a bell, leading the dog to salivate, or leading a person to blink at the bell, or whatever, which we could do pretty quickly. I could get someone in here, I could ring a bell and have you blink in about probably less than 2-3 minutes. If we just took air, put it in your eye at random moments, and right before we did that, I rang a bell. After a while, all they have to do is ring that bell and you will probably blink. And that is classical conditioning. It's probably easiest to study for this by memorizing what using the letters UCS leads to the UCR, and the CS leads to the CR. And then using examples. I would just write down in your notes as many examples of this as we've been using in this class. And there's a lot of examples. Noises, phrases, sounds, certain kinds of hand movements, whatever it is, it could be there's a lot of things that can become, that are originally neutral, that a person or an animal can begin to associate with some sort of unconditioned stimulus. All right? Are there any questions on this? This is pretty straightforward. I will ask you to repeat this for me. This will be on the test pretty clearly, just like this. And I will give you an example, and I will say, here is a bird that comes flying down to eat food whenever it hears that. You should be able to put it into this formula, so to speak, if I just give you that example. So you should be able to do that in your notes right quick. To help you, let's see if we could try it. Be thinking about it. See if you have questions on this. One more thing about Pavlov, just to share with you, is he was the genius. I think that happened was him making this pivot and going, okay, he's really good at this. By the way, I think he was like a Nobel Prize winner, or was about to be, in this particular study of salivation, and then he just switched, and it was a good switch because there was a lot there. But he was anybody know much about Pavlov? He was Russian, studied in St. Petersburg. Fascinating guy. I got to go there, and I'll tell you a quick aside. When I spent a little bit of time in Russia, and one time we were in St. Petersburg, there was just some cool things there. And so we were in this bus one time driving around the city, and this person goes like this, oh, there's the Ivan Pavlov building right down the road. And I go like this to the tour guide. There were only about 8 of us on this thing, and we all were friends. And I said, wait a minute, did you say the Ivan Pavlov building? And they said, yeah. I said, well, can we go there? And this lady goes, well, sure, it's just a business today. And so we turned around, went back down, and went to this building. That's the Ivan Pavlov building. It's still there in St. Petersburg. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go inside for this class, for y'all, to take a picture of the things that went on there. So that's what I did. So I went in, and Pavlov was an interesting character. One of the things that he did was that he provided, and all these dogs were in this. Not when I was there, but all the dogs were in there. He was really interesting, very smart. By the way, when he was studying around the turn of the century, everybody knows in Russia there was a revolution going on, and there was fighting out in the streets. He would get mad at his lab assistants if they would show up late. One of them came in late, and he said, why are you late? Dude said, well, because there's a revolution going on up there. And he said this, supposedly, hey, next time there's a revolution, you get up earlier. That's a funny thing to say. He was an interesting character. In fact, he was very creative. If you did something like I did this, I went and held this door open, and he had it, and it was just weird the way he would process things or do these things. So if you held this door open for too long, he had it wired to play a song as a result.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
It was really weird. That's Pavlov. He does the original. And then these other guys, so that's what he would do. It's kind of weird. So I go inside this building after the song played, and I went, wow, that was weird. And I said, you dropped this, I think you're so right. And I went inside there's always a lady sitting in there at these buildings. And I walked in, I said, oh, this is the Ivan Pavlov building. And she was like, not very nice. Back then, I have this view of Russia. I don't know, some of you all been there? Are there any from Russia? A couple? Yeah, okay. Well, I have this, it's fascinating. One time, I'll just tell you real quickly, I remember going in, this is during communism even. I went into a bread store one time, and I know the language enough to get by, and so I go in and I said, yeah, I'd like to buy some bread. The lady goes, we don't have any. And by the way, the only thing they sold in this store was bread. And there was bread right there. And so I go, okay, it must be my language or whatever I'm not saying or saying. So I said, I'd like to buy some of that. She goes, it's not for sale. This is a bread store. You only sell bread, and it's not for sale. And she's basically, in essence, said, yeah, that's right. So I didn't know, I had no language. So I went and got my friend who was fluent in Russian and lived there, and I said, hey, could you come help me with this? And so she asked the lady a question. I didn't understand half of it. She goes, come on, let's go. We'll go to another bread store. I go, why? She goes, I don't know. She just didn't want to sell it. Wow, this is a great country. Why didn't you just do that? So we go into the Ivan Pavlov building, and there's the key lady. They're called key ladies. And they just sit down. I said, oh, this is the Ivan Pavlov building. She goes, huh? I said, oh, are there any dogs? There are no dogs. I know, I was just messing with you. I said, like, is there stuff like with Pavlov? No. Is like there anything at all about Pavlov? No. Is this the Ivan Pavlov building? Uh-huh. There's nothing here. No, it's a business. Go away. So I started walking away. I went, I can't believe, how can you have a whole Pavlov building and nothing there? So then I remembered kind of this little trick, which is, you don't take no, and so I said, okay, there's nothing here. Can I go upstairs and look around? She goes, go ahead. And I go upstairs, and there's all kinds of things up there. There's like pictures, and there's the desk he sat at, the original picture of some of his researchers, all kinds of things. And I'm like, why would you handle me? So anyway, all that to say, everything. It was fascinating. Okay, that's the Ivan Pavlov building. That's what the dog. Not really, that was just a joke. This is what was on the sign. It said, please don't ring the bell. Don't touch this. Please not. Get it? Because if you ring a bell, they're celebrating. Do you have questions about the process of classical conditioning? It goes like this. Food causes the dog to salivate. Unconditioned response, this is just another way of saying the same thing, but I want to make sure you get it. Ready? Food causes the dog to salivate. But now, in the process of conditioning, you introduce a neutral stimulus, the bell, in which you ring a bell and the dog does nothing. Go to any cat that you want to train and go, ch-ch, the cat will do nothing. Have any of y'all figured out how we got the cat to run like crazy? It's this process. What did we do? So we go, ch-ch, and then we train that cat to be afraid of that sound because of what we did next. And it was just involved a throat pillow. That's all. A couple of throat pillows. Some of small sizes and some a little bit bigger. But the cat, all we did with the cat, by the way, cats are very fast. They don't usually get hit even if you throw things at them, like throat pillows. So we took this pillow, and I just said, hey, here, I know, let's get the cat to run like crazy at a sound. And so they thought it was cool, so we did it. So I just said, hey, here's how we'll do it, and I used this principle. So we went, took the throat pillow, and we went, as soon as the cat walked into the room, we went, and we wham through that throat pillow. And he got hit the first time. That was me. He never got hit again. And he went, bam, and he took off. And the cat came in the room the next time. I went, boom, like that, and he took off. And then the third time he came in the room, and some of you look like I'm cruel. I'm not, I was just, he only got hit like one time. The cat's fine, by the way. He's like 25 now. But anyway, here's what happened. The cat, after about like less than literally a day, he comes in that room, and you go, and bing, and after that, about 5 or 6 times, he became wise, and you go, whoa, he took off. So now all our friends would come over and say, where's your cat? I don't know, wait. So he'd come walking in all happy. He'd just sit there like, oh, yeah. And somebody would go, I know it's bad. The neutral stimulus becomes associated with it during, so I associated for the dog, it was the bell, the food, and right with the food. Bell, then the food, that led to the response. Or led the cat, boom. And then eventually, after a while, you just do the bell or do the and that's it. My wife today, I tell you, she hears a sound. Oh, she's afraid. Ain't nobody killing anybody. She's just afraid. Because she associates the sound with that. How many of you all don't like to eat a food because you associate it with the stomach flu and throwing up? Let's hear, just raise your hand and give me some of the amazing Listen to this. Here are the foods that cause some of you to throw up. Even if I were to bring them in this room, you would get nauseated. Give me, what is it? Just cinnamon in general. Because of the whole cinnamon taking a thing and that thing? Okay, so there was a cinnamon oil smell and you were sick that day. Usually, by the way, it goes like this. You have a stomach virus. You don't know you have the stomach virus, the flu, or some sort of, and then you eat a food and it becomes associated with it. So let's hear one.
Well, it's not, I don't throw up anymore, but going back to the punishing thing, another way that my parents punished me was to make me put a little bit of mustard in my mouth and hold it there. And so this is
Mustard for you.
Yeah, I can't eat
It's
mustard
bad.
anymore.
So they associate mustard with them.
Mussels or clams.
Mussels or clams. You ate them and got sick. Uh-huh.
Apple pies.
Apple pie. Apple pie, what's that?
Subway sandwiches. I had the flu and
Had the flu, ate the sandwich, and now you can't even go into a Subway. Apple pie, Subway sandwiches. What is it? Oh, Nutella. Nutella. Same way, the kind of sandwiches that are always right up there in front that, yeah. Just hamburgers? Which one? Oh. Completely different than what I heard. Caramel. Caramel. Ready? Oh, yeah. Any McDonald's food. French fries and milkshakes are fine, which are the two best things anyway. But. So the hamburgers at McDonald's. What is it? Tums. I Ready for mine? I have two, and today I don't, like you, I don't get nauseated in the sight of them. I can have them, but I really want to eat them. Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, of all things, and macaroni and cheese. I mean, so I can eat those now after, but this is like a lot of years have transpired, and all that happened is this. That's a neutral stimulus. Ready? You should, in your notes, know the UCS, the UCR, the CS, and the CR. So let's try this one. Let's take apple pie. What would tell your name?
Courtney.
Courtney. Courtney? Courtney doesn't like apple pie. Courtney, we'll just make this up, whether it's exactly happened or not. There's a stomach virus, like I had, that causes people, if you get that little virus and it goes into your stomach, you get nauseated, you throw up everything out of your stomach. Okay? That's what's causing the response of throwing up. So what's causing the response of throwing up? Virus. But somehow in Courtney's mind or in y'all's mind or whatever it is, the food you can't eat, you've associated Subway or McDonald's hamburgers or caramel or whatever the case. Tom, apple pie, right? You ate that right before and you associate that now in your mind with throwing up. That neutral stimulus that nobody else throws up to, apple pie, hopefully, most people don't, or Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, or mac and cheese, or whatever, you now throw up or feel nauseated at that. Do you understand where to put each of those things in the 4 categories? Do it in your notes, and let's see if you got it. In your notes. Ready? I'll say it. Okay, write it down real quick. What do you think the UCS, the UCR, the CS, and the CR, in the case of any food, let's just put down apple pie or Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. If you get this, you're on your way. By the way, this is so powerful that for a lot of people, we like to avoid mustard or caramel or Subway, or for me, Reese's Peanut. By the way, now I can. It's not like I can have the chocolate on the outside and the peanut butter, but if you put them together for some reason, it's just bad. Isn't that weird? But this is a very strong response. So as you're writing this down, let me just tell you that they have actually used this in a lot of cool ways. Sheep, for example, were being eaten by coyotes. Coyotes, wolves, animals would come down and eat the sheep. So they use this principle, just like we get nauseated at some of these things, so do animals. So guess what they did to keep the animals, like the coyotes, from eating the sheep? These farmers, ranchers, whatever, did a cool thing. They took a dead sheep, and they take the carcass, and they put it just outside of the pens, and they laced that carcass with a chemical that would cause, for example, coyotes to get violently ill and throw up. Wouldn't kill them. So they come down, and now they eat this carcass, sheep carcass, and they walk away, and all of a sudden, blah, they're throwing up everywhere. Horrible. Guess what happens to that coyote next time it sees a sheep? Just like apple pie for Courtney. The animal wants nothing to do with the sheep. It's so powerful that not only do they not eat the sheep, if you catch that coyote and put it in the same pen with the sheep, they are running away scared from the sheep. So the sheep runs up to him, the coyote's like, no, stay away from me, you make me sick. That's funny. That's a good use of this in a real world application instead of shooting a coyote. You just get it sick, throw it up. Do you get the UCS, the CS, the UCS, the UCR, the CS? Ready? Out loud. Let's use the food. Let's use apple pie. What's the UCS? Okay, one more time. Out loud. What's the UCS? The stomach flu virus, the flu bug. That's the UCS. What does the UCS cause? The UCR. And the UCR is nausea, throwing up. Now, Courtney and others have associated a particular food with throwing up. So what's the CS? The conditioned stimulus in the case with the apple pie and Courtney. What's the CS? Apple pie. And it causes her to do what? Throw up or feel nauseated. If you got that in your notes, then this is classical conditioning. It's really straightforward, and now this. Ready? Here we go.
Oh, damn. That's another file. Gonna have to reboot again. Hey, Dwight, do you want an Altoid?
What do you think?
In school, we learned about this scientist who trained dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell by feeding them whenever a bell rang. So for the past couple weeks, I've been conducting a similar experiment. Dwight, want an Altoid?
Okay.
Altoid?
Sure.
And Dwight?
Dwight? Yes.
What are you doing?
I don't know. Well, my mouth tastes so bad all of a sudden.
Alright. This is how you train your roommate. This is how you train people. It kind of works. The way this happens is the process of classical conditioning. So to drive it home, I'll leave this, let you figure this out. If the aroma of brewing coffee makes your heart race, what's the UCS? If you hear an example, what you have to do is go through the sequencing. What normally, if the response, by the way, they just told you what the response is. What's the response? The behavior. Your heart rate, what? Races. That's your heart rate. What causes anybody's heart rate? I have to teach you and condition you to get your heart rate if you do what? If what could you put in your body that would make your heart rate without you having to learn it? Caffeine causes your heart to race. So, if the aroma of brewing coffee, the aroma makes your heart race, does the aroma for a little kid, you can ask this question, does the aroma of a little kid cause his heart to race? No. Feed that little kid some coffee. pretty soon that little kid could smell a little coffee and go, the aroma, oh, I need some more. Because the smell, the aroma might make their heart race because it's been associated with caffeine. Make sense? So now just the smell of coffee alone could go, oh, like that. I don't know what it is for you. If it's not coffee, it's, I don't know, some drink you drink, something that has caffeine in it or whatever. Coffee, colas, I don't know, whatever they're called. Jolt. Okay? Do you understand it? If you can put it in your notes, you got it. So, those are the one thing to pay attention to as this area of classical conditioning was explored. There were new things and new principles being studied all the time, and there were some key things and some processes. For example, the acquisition phase is just simply that phase initially where, like the day that cat first walked in, the acquisition phase for Sydney, the cat, that was his name, Sydney, was taking the throw pillow, and if we threw the throw pillow and made the sound, that first time or two, that would be called, they were acquiring that process. The bird over here, the crow that comes flying over named Clubby, all it did was we left food in our driveway one day, and the bird came flying over. So I thought, okay, that bird is very observant. It sees food, it comes over and eats it. So we left like a hamburger sitting out on the driveway one time, or it fell or whatever. The bird eventually saw it, came over. So all I did was I waited for that bird. He knew the food was there, and I went, and he was right there looking because there was food in the driveway. And I walked away and waited, and I went like that. And pretty soon that bird flew down, and then I would go over and I'd put food in the driveway, and he'd go, and he would kind of hear the whistle, and I'd set food down, and eventually that bird associated that. So that's called the acquisition phase. Okay? Extinction is if you have a dog that begs, for example, at the table, if a dog does something, or an animal does something, or a child, anybody, and you want to stop it, let's say you ring a bell and you don't want the dog to salivate. How can I get the dog to stop salivating at a bell? What if I didn't want the cat to run around like crazy anymore? Could I stop the cat from running like crazy? Yeah, I do extinction. It'd be pretty straightforward. What would you do with the cat to stop it from running around at the ch-ch sound? You'd extinguish it. So that means what? I'd make the sound and not throw the pillow. I'd lock him in a room, just me and the cat, and I'd go ch-ch, and he'd run, ch-ch, ch-ch, ch-ch. And eventually that cat's gonna just go. After like 5 minutes, he's gonna go, what's up with that? Nothing happens anymore. You're extinguishing it. Does that make sense? You stop reinforcing it. Put him in a room. Yeah, go ahead, question. Eventually, if you keep going over and over again without throwing the pillow, enough time will elapse, and if you do it enough, the cat could go through what we call the process of extinction. In order to keep this connection, this association strong, every once in a while we would have to throw the pillow at him. We didn't have to for a long time, because he just took off. But yes, technically, you could eventually extinguish it and off. Generalization and discrimination are just two other processes to generalize things. Would the cat run if I went like this? Ready? Would the cat, generalization says this. The cat will run if the sound is close, if he generalizes the sound close enough. So that cat will run if the sound is like this. Do you think the cat will run? Ready? Instead of, will the cat run if I go? Probably the cat has generalized to anything that kind of sounds like, they'll run. But what if I go, woo-hoo, woo-hoo? Then he discriminates. That's a discriminate. Does that make sense? Time's up. Next week, next time we'll talk about operant conditioning and any other principles or questions about it.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit Biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.